Welcome, everyone. I'm Trisha Berry. I'm director of the Women in Engineering program in the Cockrell School. So one of your hosts for this workshop this morning. Thanks for joining in, Enrique.
And I'm Enrique Dominguez, pronouns he, him, and I am the director of the Equal Opportunity Engineering program and your other host for today. So again, if you're just joining us, please put your intro into the chat and welcome.
Awesome. So thanks for joining us this morning. This is the second year in a row that we now have hosted this virtually. We used to do this in live in-person times in the first morning of Expo, actually both mornings of Expo, so that we could see you all in person and share this information with you. We're glad we can still do this. And I thought, again, this year doing it a week or so in advance of Expo might help y'all out with some of your recruiting and your thinking as you head into virtual Expo next week. So let me start with just telling you a little bit about the Women in Engineering program for those of you who may not be familiar. So and I can stop my music if it's still playing in the background there. It's at least playing in the background of my headphones. So our Women in Engineering program is here to recruit, retain, and graduate women in the Cockrell School of Engineering, and really to advance gender equity in engineering throughout all of our spaces. And we do that in a number of ways, and I have a couple of those listed here on the slide. We create this network of peers and professionals, provide academic and career and leadership opportunities for our students to help them learn and grow as they spend their time with us on campus throughout their engineering career. And then we also are the backbone organization, the coordinating force behind what we now call the Women in STEM Leadership Collaborative, which is a collection of organizations now across campus that focus on engaging and supporting women in STEM. So our Society of Women Engineers, our Association for Women in Science, Black Women in STEM, so the Women in Electrical and Computer Engineering student orgs, and all of those types of organizations, we bring them together to support their leadership, collaborate, and support them in their endeavors. And then most exciting is that WEP is turning 30. So our first programming with the Women in Engineering program was 30 years ago this upcoming spring. So stay tuned as we head into our 30-year celebration of activities this next year.
Yeah, and I'll tell you about the EOE program. So EOE was founded in 1970, and so we, in 2020, turned 50 and are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year because last year we were unable to. So our short mission is to recruit, retain, and graduate underrepresented ethnic minorities and students with other marginalized identities. And so some of those identities include first-generation students, students who identify as low socioeconomic, students who are part of the LGBTQIA community, transfer students, rural students, students who identify as being or having a disability, students who are either part of any of the underrepresented ethnic minorities in engineering, which consist of Hispanic, African American, Black, Native American, or Indigenous, as well as Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. There's probably one or two that I missed in there, but it's, it's 8 o'clock. So we definitely work in various areas to also create pathways for students. So we're in the K through 12 space, moving people into engineering. We're in the academic space, doing retention initiatives to keep them in engineering, and then we're in the leadership and professional development as well as research space to move them forward into whatever careers that they want to be in. We also work with some student organizations. The three that you see there, Pi Sigma Pi is a locally founded organization for minority engineering focused on academics. Then NSBE, which is the National Society of Black Engineers. It has a local chapter here, but they are nationally recognized at a national level. And then SHIP, or the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, also has a national presence as an organization, but have a local chapter here at UT Austin. And then our newest addition is GUM, which is Graduates for Underrepresented Minorities. And they are a low-key, small, growing population of graduate students that are there to support each other. There's also a few other organizations in the Cockrell School that reach out to both of our programs for support, such as the LGBTQTs. I always get that wrong and I put too many letters in there, but they are growing as well and excited to be a part of the Cockrell School. So we are here to make a community for all of those individuals and make sure that they know that they are welcome. All right, so agenda moving forward, we are looking at just giving you updates at the Cockrell School, talking about scholarships, talking about student life. We'll dive into the number. I love data, so I can't wait to get to that. We'll give you some tips on how to better recruit diverse students and get into a discussion about that. And then there towards the end, Michael will join us. Michael Powell, who's the director of ECAC, will join us to give you some Expo updates, and then we'll be here to answer any questions.
Feel free to throw questions as they come about in the chat as well. We'll watch that as we're going along, and be sure to pause and answer those questions along the way. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Michelle Mansolo, Director of Engineering Scholarships.
Good morning, y'all, and welcome. I was viewing the chat and I see some new companies that are ones that we haven't worked with very closely. So we especially welcome you, and of course our familiar friends that we have long histories with. So it's always good to get this information out there or remind you what our roles are and how we're trying to help our students. And mine is pretty obvious. I do manage a scholarship program for the Cockrell School, and we have a long history of working with our companies who are trying to reach diverse students. They have the opportunity to direct those funds to specific student organization participants and also to the students who are participating in these programs with EOE and WEP. And so if that's something that your company would like to pursue or investigate, learn more about, I would be happy to talk to y'all and explain the process and what that commitment looks like. It's a great way to really impact usually a smaller group of students, but also have the opportunity to develop a very personal relationship with them. And we would love to have that visit if that's something you would be interested in. I'm sure our contact information will be shared afterwards. So please follow up with me if you have any questions.
Awesome, thank you, Michelle. And yes, we will share this presentation and the recording and all of our contact information out afterwards. All right, Alison. Alison Bodner is the Director of Engineering Student Life.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Alison. I just want to briefly chat about what ESL does in case you haven't heard of us yet. So ESL supports current undergraduate and graduate students in the Cockrell School. We provide leadership opportunities and community development opportunities. So we place a strong emphasis on teaching teamwork and ethics and communication throughout our programs. As you can see on the slide, we are the umbrella office for all the Cockrell School of Engineering student organizations. There's about 80 that live in our office. So we work very closely with WEP and EOE, as well as lots of the other student orgs. And it's a really great way if you're interested in connecting with students around a specific interest. It's a great way to connect with either a small or a large group, depending on what you're looking for. We also have numerous programs that are listed, and we have some more as well. But just to highlight two today, you see Gun Engineering. Gun Engineering is our largest event. It's a huge welcome for our first year students, and it's a really great way for companies to show their support from the very beginning. You would have a table and you get to celebrate the start of the year. We usually have about 1,500 new students, and 250 student leaders who attend. This past year, we actually doubled it and welcomed our sophomore class as well. So it's always a fun time and a really great way to get to know students right from the beginning. And then the second one I want to highlight quickly is the Leadership Institute. Yes, there are some that are focused on sustainability, and I'll put some more stuff in the chat in a second. And yeah, the second one I wanted to highlight is Leadership Institute, which is a week-long residential leadership program It's for 120 students and 14 student leaders. There are two ways that companies can get involved. They can either send a representative to attend as what we call a guest leader, and that commitment would be a half day. They would come and they would talk about their experiences and really have a chance to motivate our student leaders. And this is great for folks who have been in the field for a while. The second way that companies can get involved is they can send what we call a cluster facilitator. And that person would be with the students for the entire week, and they would be facilitating a small group. So a really great way to get to know students on a very, very individual level, because you're spending all day, every day with them for a whole week. And that position is usually best for what we call our rising stars in the company, usually 3 to 15 years out of college. So those are just a few ways to get involved in ESL. Like I said, we work really closely with WEP and EOE. So if you have any questions, let any of us know. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Tricia and Enrique.
Awesome, thank you. And I think you heard from both Michelle and Alison, our programs all work very closely together. So our intention is to support our students in whatever ways we can and to help you with your recruiting goals and your relationship building goals with our students as well. So reach out to any of us. We all are intimately familiar with each other's programs and how they work. And so we're happy to help you navigate the bureaucracy and the silos and the craziness on campus best we can. So never hesitate to reach out. All right, Enrique, data.
Right, so yes. So we're going to talk about our current first class day fall numbers, and then give you some historical and departmental enrollment views in both chart and graph form. So we're excited about that. And then some graduation rates and some national comparisons on how our programs do and the Cockrell School does in comparison to others across the country. Okay, so for our underrepresented minority groups, here are our numbers currently as of the first class day. And I keep saying first class day because the official data date for the university is actually the 12th class day, but this happens before that point. And so we're giving you the most up-to-date data that we have. So at this point, our graduate student group is up 1.5% to 10%. We've never been 10% of the graduate school. So this is amazing. We are excited that there's an increase there. When we look at our first year in group of students that just came in, and FTIC, by the way, you'll see across the presentation, stands for first time in college. So the first year undergrad group of URMs is also now above 30%. Something that has never been the case in the Cockrell School, and is almost up 5%. So again, just on the up and up is a great progress for us. At the undergraduate level, across all years, first years through 4+ years, we are 26.2%, up 3 1/3. So it is almost reaching 1,600 students, which again is our highest point that we've ever been in the Cockrell School since the creation of EOE. And then you'll see there that we're at 19% graduating or offering degrees to undergraduate students for URMs as of 2019 and 2020. And so our latest year will come up and be shown next year, but we continue to make progress in a positive direction as well in that.
Enrique, there was a question about what does URM stand for, and I stuck that in there, but maybe you want to repeat while I flip the slide to who's included in that.
Yes, so URM is underrepresented minority, and so we focus those on the ethnic underrepresented minorities, which are Hispanic, African American, Black students, and Native or Indigenous, as well as Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander.
And here's some similar data looking at our women within the Cockrell School, the students who identify as women. We are also up on our graduate students. We're up about 2% to 26.6% for all of our graduate students across the Cockrell School. When we look at those first time in college undergraduates, we are also up quite a bit this year. 33.6% of our incoming class are women. And when we look at that URM population, those underrepresented ethnic minorities, 34% of those students are women as well. And that's up 7.6%. So that took a huge leap this year. And I will give the shout out to EOE and WEP with some really focused and targeted efforts that we've had on engaging and supporting and recruiting women of color and bringing them into our community. As far as all undergraduates go, we're at 31% women, so up a tad a bit there overall. And again, when we look at the underrepresented populations, we're at about 28% overall. As far as undergraduate degrees, we don't have the latest data on that just yet, but we were at 28.7% for the previous year. We should have that information when we share this back out after that 12th class day. So keep asking questions in the chat there. We're happy to answer questions that you have. We're going to dive into some eye charts. We don't expect that you're going to read all of these, but we want now, and we're not going to go through these in detail, but we want you to see what we have that we'll be sharing out with you afterwards so that you'll know what to expect and what these things mean when you have them in your inbox. Enrique?
Yeah, so what you'll see there in the chart is on the left side column are the abbreviations of the degrees provided in the graduate school, because this is our graduate student enrollment. And then at the top, you'll see the ethnicities and races there shown as identified by the students. And so on the far right column, you'll see that there's a women or gender specific column there. And again, reported as the students report in their application. So across each line, you'll see how the major or degree shows its representation within each of the races and ethnicities. And then you'll see there in the total Cockrell School total amount column before the women column, what the totals are for each of those degrees. So this will be similar in both grad and undergrad, but the next slide actually shows you the percentage breakdown of those. Again, another eye chart, and if you're anything like me and you want to get closer to the Zoom, which I find myself doing always, you'll see there that some of the percentages are pretty drastic within each of those degrees or even ethnicities when it comes to the representation.
So those were the graduate numbers. We'll get into some of the undergraduate ones as well. So again, this is preliminary data and first class day data. So it may shift a little bit when we get the final information on the 12th class day. But this shows you the trend over time. So over the past 5 years, what do those percentages look like? What do those numbers look like? And how has that been changing over time for all of our underrepresented ethnic minority groups as well as for women? Pause for a moment so you can look at it.
Absolutely. And I'll call your attention to the far right column, which is the Texas percentage. And a lot of our goals revolve around us wanting to get to the representation or mimic the representation in Texas. And so you'll see there how we have some progress to make if we want to make that our vision.
So again, our intention is not to have you understand necessarily or quiz you on all of this data now, but to give you a glimpse for what you're going to see and where we stand. And we'll again share this out afterwards so you can dive into it as well.
Yes, so this chart, and Trisha, I'll let you get to the question because I saw it just pop up, but this chart is our historical enrollment of underrepresented minority students. What you'll see there is the very top line is total URM. So this is the addition of African American, Black, Native American, Indigenous, Hispanic, or Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. As you make your way down the lines from top to bottom, it is Hispanic, secondary. The next line there is the African American Black student population. And then the two towards the bottom are our Native American, Indigenous, as well as Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. What is also something to note in this graph is that there are certain legal cases and or URM admission changes that have happened both at the university level as well as the college level that have impacted our enrollment as we continued for the past 50 years. So you'll see there in those blue bolded areas some interesting affirmative action cases that really tailored how admissions was looking at enrolling underrepresented individuals in the school as well as the college. And then there towards the end, we in 2000, or towards the right, I'm sorry, in 2004, there was a calculus readiness policy implemented that it took us a little while to get into and to get students ready for, because that impacted how calculus was available and or access was available to students in the high school space, and getting them ready for that. And then in 2012, there was an adjustment in the admissions policy in the college. And of course, there was the most recent affirmative action case of Fisher versus UT. So since then, there has been drastic changes at the university level up in the provost's office to really look at how we are moving and recruiting underrepresented students across the not only the college, but the university. And I'll say this, that we are an emerging HSI, which is a Hispanic serving institution. And I say emerging because it takes a few years for us to establish that title, but the university is definitely moving towards that, because that very much is resembling the overall population of our state. So I'll let Trisha talk about hers now.
We like those upward trends. We also, again, are seeing those upward trends with our historical enrollment of women. You can see our percentages there when the Women in Engineering program was founded. It was around 15-16%. Some of those cases did not impact our enrollment of women quite as drastically, but I've made a couple of notes where we did see some pieces in there that impacted enrollment. But there you see our highest number and highest percentage ever this year. So we're excited about that. So these slides are the same as what Enrique talked about previously, but for the undergraduate students. So same deal here, where we have all of the raw numbers broken out by degree, broken out by ethnicity, broken out by gender. So you can dive into that as well as our percentages. Any last comments on those, Enrique?
Oh yeah, so I'm always getting the infamous email of like, hey, I'm really looking for, and let's pick a different race this year or an ethnicity this year. And let me go with an Indigenous student, because we have a new office opening up in South Dakota, and we're really looking for an engineer in that space. What you'll notice is that there are very few from UT Austin, and they're in very few departments or majors. And so it's when you're thinking about how you strategically look for students that may fill those positions for those specific social type of positions in engineering, then this will definitely help you kind of just take a very close look at where those students may be possible.
All right, so let's talk trends. So here's another way that we like to share the data. Again, looking at those trends over time and looking at how our enrollment has changed for women within each of the different disciplines. So you can see from the last 3 years that we're kind of up and down in some of those majors. Keep in mind, some of these disciplines are tiny departments, small departments, which means that there can be big swings in the percentage, even though the number may not be changing a whole lot in spaces like architectural engineering, biomedical engineering, computational engineering, where the enrollment is quite small. But this at least gives you an idea of what those trends look like and where we sit within each of the departments.
And this trend was a fascinating thing that I most recently was thinking about with regards to how the incoming class of students is doing in comparison to how we are graduating our underrepresented minority students. And so you'll see there that the top line is how by number we are graduating underrepresented minorities. And then the blue columns you'll see there are how our first time in college students are being enrolled. And so there is a 4 to 4.5 year difference in time with these, because our average 4-year graduation rate ends up being more close to 4.5 years for students. And so, but what's really interesting is that the trends of the line seem to follow the trends of our incoming class. So as we get more students in, we are graduating more students in this space. And so that's, to see that trend continue up in that way is very promising for us.
Speaking of degrees, Enrique, you want to go through this one too?
Absolutely. So here are the numbers across, I guess what now is close to 10 years. So you can see there that the percentages and the numbers are there for both URM students as well as women, and then the total numbers across the Cockrell School. So not only is the Cockrell School just graduating more students as well, but so are both the populations of URM as well as women.
And we just got, I think yesterday or earlier this week, the 2021 information. So we'll be adding that new column in here and adjusting this when we send out you the final presentation later this month. So let's talk about national comparisons. So we also always like to check in and see how we're doing compared to our peer institutions across the country. And we are continuing to lead in a variety of spaces. So when we look at the total number of bachelor's engineering degrees awarded out of all US engineering schools that report into the American Society for Engineering Education, which is an organization that collects graduation data, enrollment data across the country for engineering schools and for other countries as well. We are the number 9 institution in the number of BS degrees awarded to women. So we are graduating lots and lots of women, as well as underrepresented minorities and Hispanics. So as Enrique said, we're an emerging Hispanic serving institution. And so that's reflected here with this information. So again, if you're coming here to recruit diverse students, we have them and you will find them. So we're excited to continue to be national leaders in these spaces. We also have some charts that show you by degree and overall how the Cockrell School and our different departments compare to those national averages. And so these are the most up-to-date information that we have. So these charts will not change when we send you the final information. So overall and by department, we truly are exceeding national averages nearly across the board with our enrollment of women at the undergrad space. Same with, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. You'll see there that this is the same in the space of URM, but this graph specifically focuses on African American. We'll have a couple of different graphs focusing on the two ethnicities or races, because it's much more complicated to put them all together, and it just becomes very interesting to try to read. But the first 3 columns are the US comparison, as well as the last 3 columns being our Cockrell School numbers. And overall in the African American group, we have some room to grow. You'll see there, if you just look at the furthest column on the left, that there are other peer institutions that are doing a better job with our African American community, and we strive to do better as well here. So some of the majors are making progress and definitely getting closer to that national average, but we are on a positive direction in some of those.
And I should make a note, and maybe Enrique, you can help me remember to do this when we share out the information. For some reason, architectural engineering in the Cockrell School did not report data for 2019. So there's going to be a gap throughout all of this. Apparently our school just didn't report that major at all. So we have one data point that's missing throughout. And then environmental engineering has just started with their graduating classes, as well as computational engineering, which is not reflected in here at all. So there's some gaps in our Cockrell School data there because we're just starting to get some of those students. And we won't have national comparisons for computational engineering because that is not a widespread degree that other institutions really even have at this point.
And similarly, this is the graph for our Hispanic students. So we are doing much better in this space with regards to our overall comparison. And you'll see there also have some room to grow in some of the majors. But overall, this is the largest growing population at the state level as well as in the college. And so we are encouraged to see that our graduation rates are increasing in the same regard.
All right, so one of the things that we also like to do in this presentation is share out some strategies that we know have been successful for other companies and are based in some of the research around how to engage and how to support and how to recruit diverse students. So this information doesn't necessarily specifically apply just to UT Austin. Some of what we will share does, but it really does apply anywhere that you are trying to recruit. And we want to help you get to our students and build those relationships with our students in the best way possible.
Okay, so some strategies to better recruit the students at UT Austin is definitely partnering with the diversity organizations that you heard us mention early on. Again, if you have questions about who those are and how to get in contact with them, you can either go through us or also Alison, because she's very familiar with those organizations as well. One thing that I do want to remind folks about is that due to the way that our organizations are I guess created or supported at the university level, there are certain rules and policies that they have to abide by, and we're continuously telling them, hey, remember this and remember that. And so there are rules that our students are dispersing amongst their corporate partners and supporters. And so if at any point they hit you with the flyer that says, hey, these are the things that we can and cannot do, then and you have any questions about it, then just let us know, because as any other institution, policies are always interesting and changing and in flux in any given year. And we're trying to help them navigate through those as well. So targeting resume searches, ECEC has the ability for you to use acronyms or use key search words in order to pull those out. And so some of those acronyms were shared in this presentation, as well as either EOE or WEP, and maybe leadership, as you heard Alison talk about earlier. So really targeting those will help you identify students that are embedded in both our programming as well as those other diversity organizations. Michelle talked about using scholarships to help target some students who may be a part of these organizations or may be participating in our programs. So there's those ways in which you can get that strategy to get to those students for those co-op or internship positions, or maybe even full-time. And then being visible and building relationships with students has been a very interesting dynamic this past couple of years. Prior to COVID, students were very interested in seeing you on campus and being very consistent with how you do that. Once COVID hit, well, then everything just went awry. And we are trying to navigate how we can stay consistent with students, both in the virtual space as well as in the in-person space. And we know as companies, y'all are trying to navigate that for your safety and your own internal policies as well. So being clear with the students on how to navigate that as a company, as well as how that may be different in students, is really what they want. So just having that open conversation and dialogue about what your expectations are will really help them kind of establish that level with you and be visible in the best regards that both are capable of doing. So those relationships go a long way with our student organizations as well as our programs.
Let's talk role models. So the other piece is really to provide those role models so that the students can visualize themselves in those spaces. They want to be able to see themselves reflected in your workforce, to feel like that's a place where they can belong. So if you think about who do you have coming to present, who do you have participating in the programs that WEP and EOE offer? Who are you sending to student organization meetings? Being very deliberate and strategic about that is really important. Being very mindful about who it is that you're sending, what experiences they have, what is their background, can make a huge difference in building those relationships, as Enrique talked about with our students.
Okay, definitely watching the message when it comes to students and student orgs, as well as just individual students who see you or your presentation out there, however it is, via social media, online, or even just in person. One thing that we consistently remind them of, that we love to remind us always about, is if you do not intentionally include, then you may unintentionally exclude. So thinking about how you are being intentional in who you send to events and who you send to the recruitment efforts that you have, putting those key images in your presentations or bringing them with you to campus, having them available, ensuring that your messages around gender are inclusive and culturally responsive as well. Our students are teaching us things these days about what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, and it is appropriate one day and not the next. And so being very gracious and understanding of how we're all growing in this is definitely something that you can bring up with them when talking about it. Just asking them, I was like, is it okay to ask for pronouns? Is it okay to use this language when talking to students in your space? And so keeping your message real is the best way, and just being honest with them and being focused, because when you're not and you're not genuine with them, then they definitely can feel that, they definitely can tell that, and it is an extreme turnoff. And in this cancel culture that we have these days, just being able to say, I don't know, and help me learn is much better than pretending you do know and then being canceled almost immediately because you tried to lie about it. So that is very something that real that we have been seeing in the culture of this generation. So yeah, good luck.
Yeah, and these are just a few examples that our students have shared with us that have come out of experiences with companies, with recruiters, and they speak up, they share. And this is not what you want them sharing about your company. You want them sharing about the great opportunities that your company has, and you want them sharing about their great experiences that they had, so that other students will be interested as well. So they are vocal, they are mindful, they are paying attention. And so this is not to scare you by any stretch of the imagination, but as Enrique said, just to help you be mindful and strategic in your messaging, in the people that you're sending, and taking that time to train your recruiters so that they can understand how to do this well, what is appropriate and what is not, how to communicate well with the students, and how to recruit them best into your spaces. And we have a number of workshops that EOE and WEP lead, as well as some other partners on campus, that we call our You Belong Here workshop series. And we do these with our students, we do these with our research groups, we do these with departments and faculty and staff, called Bias Busting. We have one on creating inclusive spaces. We do one that's specifically on navigating the workplace. So our students are receiving this kind of training, and they're receiving this kind of information to help them navigate bias and stereotypes in their own spaces, which is also why they're hyper aware. And we're happy to talk about these with you as well. There's a lot of great public resources that we would encourage you to point your folks to as well. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Michael so we can make sure that we get to your questions around Expo and virtual Expo and what's coming up with that. So Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you. And you should be able to share your screen as well. You need to do that.
No, I think I'll be fine. Thank you, Tricia. I will not take a lot of people's time because you are not here to get a lesson on virtual expo or career fairs, although I'm happy to answer questions. And also just to piggyback off of what Tricia and Enrique were just saying in the previous couple of slides, just also be aware that students are getting less afraid about asking some of these very direct questions about your company culture. And as they were saying, an honest answer is much better than an answer you think they want to hear. And that's just what I'm also getting from their feedback. But back to Expo, many of you probably in this meeting are also here for virtual Expo. If you did Expo with us last fall, that was on a platform called Career Eco. If you participated in Spring 21 Expo, that was on the Simplicity platform. So if you participate in the spring, Fall 21 Expo is on the same platform, Simplicity, which is just part of our system. So it's the same system that hopefully you all are using in recruiting our students. So it should be simple from that standpoint. Either you or another contact at your company has access into our system and the ability to utilize the system and go to the event. So the Fall 21 Expo event is September 8th and September 9th. You may have signed up for one or both days. Those are treated in our system as two separate events. So day one is its own event, day two is its own event independently. And whichever one you are signed up for, that's what you will go and do. If you are the main point of contact, you have probably heard a lot from the Expo directors, Ashka and Teddy, as well as from our recruiting coordinator, Charles Crane, who has a lot of good instructions for how to navigate not only our system, but also the career fair itself. And the links that are shown on this particular slide are all different. The first two are links to videos that will help guide you into the system. First one's nice and easy and simple. I think it's the one that's got some kind of cute music in the background and just kind of guides you through clicking on all the right things to engage with the platform to do the career event. The second one, as you can see, is 20 minutes long, and that one's actually more of a guided demonstration by a Simplicity representative who's showing employers how to navigate the system so that they can understand it a lot better if you're not familiar with it. And then the third one is actually a form that Simplicity has where basically if you put in your name, company name, and email address, they will send you probably these same links plus some additional materials that you may want to look at just to make sure you're prepared. The main thing for virtual career fair, as probably a lot of you know by now, because we've been doing virtual career fairs for about a year, is just like a regular career fair, being prepared, but being prepared in different ways. You're not taking care of flight arrangements and hotels and making sure that your booth materials arrive at the Irwin Center. In this case, you're making sure that you know who your recruiters are. You know that they know how to get into the system. You know what time you need to be in there and how you want to set up either your group chat, if you have that, or your individual chat, or both. And you have your own system behind the scenes. As long as you have all of that ready, the students will be eager to see you. They just want to go where you point them once they get there and once they get to talking to you. So the more that you have done with looking at these videos and checking out the actual system itself, the better off you will be on the day of, because then you won't run into any difficulties in that realm. I don't think I have anything much more to say. I am going to drop in the chat that if you do have questions about recruiting or questions about the fair after this meeting, that you can always reach out to our recruiting coordinator, Charles, who can definitely guide you through whatever questions that you have. Please bear with him, though. He's very popular this time of year. He's very efficient and very good at getting back to people, but he's also got a lot of people asking him questions. But there's his information in the chat. And I'm happy to stick around if there are questions, but I also don't want to take away from the time that Tricia and Enrique have.
If there are any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or come on mute. And we really only have one more slide. So really you can ask any of us questions about any of the stuff that we have shared. We're going to send this presentation out. We'll send it to all of you that are here, but also to whoever is your primary contact for Expo. And we'll send that out later today with a link to the recording if you want to share that out, as well as this presentation that again has that preliminary information. Once we get the 12th class day data, which I believe we should receive on September 10th, Enrique and I will get in there and update all those charts and eye charts for you and make sure that all the data is correct and good. And we'll get that back out to you later in September. And then again, connect with EOE or WEP or any of us to learn more about how you can engage in our programs. We have a number of things that we are doing virtually still. We are also doing some things in person with our students, hopefully all masked. And we are happy to have those conversations with you about how to engage and connect. So with that, we'll pause and see if there are any additional questions that any of us can help you with. Feel free to come off mute or throw them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer.
Thank you all very much for your time early this morning and your attention. I know this is recruiting diverse students is a hot topic these days, and doing it well and doing it right is a value for a lot of your companies. So thank you for being here and putting in the effort. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a fantastic Expo.